The council chamber was silent as the decision was made. 12 members of the Hegemony High Council sat around a curved table made of black stone, their faces lit by the soft glow of holographic displays. Each of them represented a species that had been part of the hegemony for thousands of years. Each of them had conquered worlds, enslaved populations, and built empires on the bones of those who resisted. Today, they had turned their attention to a small blue planet on the edge of the galaxy. Earth. Fleet Commander Vorath stood at the center of the chamber, his tall reptilian body casting a long shadow across the polished floor. His scales were dark green, almost black, and his yellow eyes moved slowly across the faces of the council members. He had served the hegemony for over 200 years. He had crushed rebellions on a dozen worlds. He had never failed a mission. "The humans have become a problem," said High Counselor Merrick, the oldest member of the council. His voice was thin and dry, like wind blowing through dead leaves. "They refuse to pay tribute. They refuse to acknowledge our authority. They trade with species that have rejected hegemony rule. They welcome refugees from worlds we have conquered. This cannot continue." Vorath nodded slowly. He had studied the reports on humanity. They were a young species, barely 300 years into space travel. Their technology was primitive compared to hegemony standards. Their military was small. Their population was concentrated on a single planet and a handful of colonies. By every measure, they should have been easy to control. But they were not. For 30 years, hegemony diplomats had tried to bring humanity into the fold. They had offered trade agreements that would have made Earth a wealthy client state. They had threatened economic sanctions. They had sent warships to patrol human space as a show of force. None of it had worked. The humans simply refused to submit. They smiled politely, declined every offer, and continued doing exactly what they wanted. "What do you recommend, Commander?" asked Counselor Vela, a female of the Thaxian species with silver skin and 4 arms. "Surely you do not suggest open war with a species that has shown no direct aggression toward us." Vorath turned to face her. "I suggest exactly that, Counselor. The humans are a disease. Their ideas of freedom and equality spread to every species they contact. 3 of our client worlds have requested independence in the last decade alone. They cite human philosophy, human ideals. If we do not stop this now, we will lose more." The council murmured among themselves. Vorath could see the fear in their eyes. Not fear of humanity, but fear of what humanity represented. The hegemony had maintained control for 10,000 years by convincing subject species that resistance was impossible. The humans had proven that was a lie simply by existing. "How many ships will you need?" asked High Counselor Merrick. Vorath had prepared for this question. 800 warships. It is more than enough to destroy their orbital defenses and occupy their planet. I expect the campaign to last no more than 2 weeks. 800 ships to conquer a single primitive world? Counselor Vela raised what might have been an eyebrow. "That seems excessive." "Well, it is not about necessity," Vorath replied. "It is about sending a message. Every species in the galaxy will see what happens to those who defy the hegemony. The humans will serve as an example for the next 1,000 years." The vote was unanimous. The order was given. 3 days later, Vorath stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crushing Tide. It was the largest warship in the hegemony fleet. Nearly 3 kilometers long, armed with enough weapons to reduce a continent to glass. Around it, 799 other vessels moved into formation. Destroyers, cruisers, carriers, support ships. It was the largest armada assembled in over a century. Sub-Commander Thelis approached with a data tablet in his clawed hands. He was younger than Vorath, his scales still bright blue, and there was something in his eyes that looked almost like concern. "Commander, I have compiled the latest intelligence on human military capabilities." "Read it to me," Vorath said without looking away from the viewport. Thelis scrolled through the data. Their primary fleet consists of approximately 50 combat vessels. Most are small patrol ships. Their largest warship, designated the Lincoln, is roughly 1/5 the size of the Crushing Tide. Their planetary defenses include 12 orbital stations and a network of ground-based missile systems. Total military personnel is estimated at 2 million. Voreth finally turned to look at his second-in-command. "And you are worried?" Thelis hesitated. "Commander, the humans have never lost a defensive engagement. In 3 separate conflicts with aggressive species, they have repelled every attack. The Vorn Collective sent 40 ships against a human colony called New Boston. None of them returned. The Vorn are savages," Voreth said dismissively. "They attack without strategy or coordination. We are the hegemony. We have conquered species that could destroy stars. These humans are clever. I will grant them that. But cleverness does not stop plasma bombardment." Thelis did not seem convinced, but he knew better than to argue further. "Yes, Commander. The fleet is ready to jump on your order." Voreth looked out at the assembled armada one more time. 800 ships, each one crewed by soldiers who had dedicated their lives to hegemony glory. In a few days, they would add another conquered world to the empire. The humans would learn their place. Their children would grow up under hegemony rule. Their grandchildren would not even remember a time when Earth was free. "All ships," Voreth announced over the fleet-wide communication channel, "engage faster than light drives. We make for the Sol system, for the glory of the hegemony." The stars stretched into lines as 800 ships jumped to faster than light speed. They carried with them the full might of an empire that had never known defeat. They expected to find a primitive species cowering in fear. They had no idea what was waiting for them. On Earth, deep beneath a mountain that humans called Cheyenne, a warning light began to blink. A young officer named Lisa Grant noticed it first. She stared at her screen for a long moment, her heart beating faster as the data scrolled past. Then she picked up a phone and spoke the words that would change everything. "Get me Admiral Morrison. We have incoming 800 ships." The battle for Earth was about to begin. Admiral Linda Morrison had not slept in 36 hours. She stood in the heart of the Global Defense Command, a facility buried so deep beneath the Rocky Mountains that it could survive a direct nuclear strike. The walls were lined with screens showing data from every satellite, sensor, and listening post in human space. Right now, all of them were focused on a single point, the edge of the solar system where 800 enemy ships would soon arrive. She was 62 years old with gray hair cut short and practical. Her uniform was simple, without medals or decorations. She had served in the military for 40 years, rising through the ranks not through politics but through competence. When the hegemony had first made contact with humanity 3 decades ago, she had been a young captain commanding a patrol ship. She had seen immediately what the aliens truly were beneath their offers of friendship and trade. They were conquerors. They saw humanity as nothing more than the next species to be absorbed into their empire. She had spent the last 30 years preparing for this day. Captain Daniel Perry entered the command center with a tablet in his hands. He was in his late 30s, tall and thin, with nervous energy that never seemed to fade. He had been her aide for 5 years, and she trusted him completely. "Admiral, the Council is demanding an update. The Secretary General wants to know if we should attempt diplomatic contact." Linda let out a small breath that might have been a laugh. "Diplomatic contact. We have been attempting diplomatic contact for 30 years. We have smiled. We have been patient. We have tried to show them that we mean no harm to anyone. And what did they decide? That our kindness makes us weak. That our willingness to talk means we are afraid to fight." She turned to face him directly. "No, Daniel. The time for talking is over. They have made their decision. Now, they will live with the consequences." Daniel nodded slowly. He had seen the classified briefings. He knew what humanity had built in secret over the past 3 decades. The visible fleet of 50 ships was only the beginning. It was a mask, a deception designed to make Earth look weak and vulnerable. Behind that mask was something else entirely. "What are your orders, Admiral?" Linda walked to the main display and touched a button. The screen changed to show a detailed map of the solar system. Red dots marked the projected arrival point of the hegemony fleet. Blue dots marked human positions. There were not many blue dots visible. "First, we send a message to the hegemony fleet. One word. Leave." She paused. "They will not listen." "Of course. But I want it on record. that we gave them a chance. And when they refuse, then we activate Protocol Omega. She turned to look at him, and there was something ancient and terrible in her eyes. Daniel, do you know why humanity has survived every threat we have ever faced, every extinction event, every war, every natural disaster? Daniel shook his head. Because we are very, very good at one thing: killing anything that threatens our home. She turned back to the display. The hegemony thinks they know war. They have conquered species that surrendered after the first battle. They have fought enemies who lined up their ships in neat formations and died with honor. They have never fought a species like us. A species that has been killing each other for 100,000 years. A species that invented nuclear weapons and then used them. A species that looks at an impossible situation and says, yes, but what if we tried anyway? The message was sent. One word transmitted across the void of space toward the approaching fleet. Leave. Simple and clear. The response came 4 hours later. Fleet Commander Vorath appeared on the main screen. His reptilian face twisted into an expression that humans had learned to recognize as contempt. You send us warnings, humans? You should be sending surrender terms. We will arrive in 6 hours. Prepare your leaders to submit. Prepare your population for occupation. Any resistance will be met with orbital bombardment. This is your only notice. Linda stepped forward so that her face filled the transmission. Commander, I am going to say this once, and I want you to remember my words very carefully. You do not have to do this. You can turn your ships around and go home. No one needs to die today. Vorath made a sound that might have been laughter. You threaten us? You have 50 ships. We have 800. Your species will learn its place in the galaxy, Admiral. I suggest you spend your remaining hours making peace with whatever gods you pray to. The transmission ended. Linda stood still for a long moment. Around her, the command center was silent. Every officer, every technician, every soldier watched her with a mixture of fear and hope. They all knew what was coming. They all knew the stakes. She finally spoke. Protocol Omega is now active. All commands, begin final preparations. Wake up everything we have, every ship, every weapon, every surprise we have been saving for this day. She looked around the room at her people. The enemy expects to find a primitive species with outdated technology and no will to fight. Let us show them how wrong they are. The command center erupted into controlled chaos. Screens flickered as systems that had been dormant for years came online. Across the solar system, hidden facilities received their activation codes. Ships that had been stored in secret hangars began their power-up sequences. Weapons, platforms concealed within asteroids ran final diagnostics. Captain Daniel Perry watched it all with a mixture of awe and terror. He had read the files. He had seen the specifications. But seeing it all come alive was something else entirely. Admiral, he said quietly, do you really think we can win this? Linda Morrison turned to look at him, and for just a moment, the weight of command seemed to lift from her shoulders. She smiled. Daniel, I do not think we can win. I know we will win. The hegemony has made the worst mistake any conqueror can make. They have threatened our home, our families, our children. There is nothing in this universe more dangerous than a human fighting for their home. She turned back to the displays showing the approaching enemy fleet. 800 ships filled with soldiers who had no idea what they were walking into. Let them come, she said softly. We are ready. 6 hours later, the hegemony Armada dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. They had come to conquer Earth. They would find something very different waiting for them. The stars returned to normal as the hegemony Armada dropped out of faster-than-light travel. 800 warships emerged from the void in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming in the distant light of the human sun. Fleet Commander Vorath stood at the center of his bridge aboard the crushing tide, watching the main display as sensors began scanning their surroundings. Report, he ordered, his voice calm and steady. Sub-Commander Thelis worked at his station for several moments before responding. We have arrived at the designated coordinates, Commander. The Sol system lies before us. I am detecting the third planet, Earth, at a distance of approximately 4 light hours. And their defenses? Thelis frowned at his display, his blue scales reflecting the glow of the screen. Minimal, Commander. I am detecting 12 orbital stations around Earth. Approximately 47 combat vessels, all of them gathered in a defensive formation near their moon. A few dozen sensor satellites scattered through the system. Nothing else. Vorath felt a surge of satisfaction. The humans were exactly as the intelligence reports had described. A primitive species with barely enough ships to defend a single planet. They had been so arrogant in their refusal to submit, and now they would pay the price for that arrogance. Set course for Earth, he commanded. All ships maintain formation. We will approach at standard combat speed. I want every captain to witness the moment their species' freedom ends. The Armada began to move, 800 ships gliding through the darkness of space like predators stalking prey. They passed the outer planets without incident. Gas giants the color of rust and gold spun silently in the void, their moons casting long shadows. The fleet moved past them all, drawing ever closer to the blue world that was their target. Captain Kevin Rhodes stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance, watching the approaching enemy fleet on his tactical display. He was 45 years old with a weathered face and hands that had seen decades of service. His ship was positioned at the center of the visible human fleet, 46 other vessels spread out around him in what looked like a desperate defensive formation. "Sir," said Lieutenant Amy Chen from her station at Sensors, "the enemy fleet will reach engagement range in approximately 3 hours." Kevin nodded slowly. He knew his orders. Look weak. Look afraid. Draw them in past the point of no return. Then survive what came next. All ships, he said over the fleet communication channel, maintain defensive positions. Do not fire unless fired upon. Make them think we are trying to negotiate. He heard the tension in his own voice and forced himself to relax. Around him, his crew moved through their duties with practiced efficiency. They were good people. They had families on Earth. Children who would grow up free if they succeeded today, or not at all if they failed. A communication request came through from the Hegemony flagship. Kevin accepted it, and the reptilian face of Fleet Commander Vorath appeared on his screen. "Human Commander," Vorath said, his tone dripping with contempt. "I am pleased to see you have gathered your pathetic fleet to greet us. I offer you one final chance to surrender. Order your ships to stand down, and I will allow your crews to live as servants of the Hegemony. Refuse, and I will destroy every single one of you." Kevin forced himself to stay calm. "Commander, I am authorized to begin surrender negotiations. Please, we need more time. Our leaders are still discussing terms." Vorath smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "You have no terms to discuss. You will surrender completely and unconditionally, or you will die. Those are your only options." "Please," Kevin said, hating the word even as he spoke it. "Just give us a few more hours. We are not a threat to you. Look at our ships. We cannot possibly win against your fleet. We just need time to organize a peaceful transition." The smile on Vorath's face grew wider. "Very well, human. You have until we reach Earth orbit. Use that time wisely. Convince your leaders that resistance is futile." The transmission ended. Kevin let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. "That arrogant fool," he muttered. "He actually believes we are begging for mercy." Lieutenant Amy Chen looked up from her station. "Captain, they are not even raising their shields. They are treating this like a parade. Not a military operation." "Good," Kevin said. "Let them keep underestimating us. Every minute they spend feeling superior is another minute we have to prepare." He turned to his communications officer. "Send a coded message to command. The enemy has taken the bait. They are not expecting resistance." Deep within the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, Commander Sarah Blake received the message aboard the hidden command station designated Fortress 1. She was responsible for coordinating the first wave of humanity's counterattack. Around her, hundreds of technicians monitored systems that the Hegemony did not know existed. "All stations report ready," her tactical officer announced. Weapons are charged. Targeting solutions are locked. We are waiting for your order. Sarah looked at the holographic display showing the approaching enemy fleet. 800 dots moving in a tight formation, completely unaware of the thousands of weapons pointed at them from every direction, hidden in asteroids, buried under the surfaces of moons, floating in the darkness disguised as space debris. 30 years of preparation, all leading to this moment. Hold position, she ordered. Let them get past Mars. Let them think they are almost home free. When they are deep in our trap with nowhere to run, then we strike. The hegemony fleet continued its advance. They passed the orbit of Mars without incident. They passed through the asteroid belt, sensors detecting nothing but rocks and ice. They had no idea that they were swimming into the jaws of a predator. On Earth, Admiral Linda Morrison watched the enemy fleet creep closer on her display. Her hand hovered over a single button. One press would unleash everything humanity had built for this day. One press would end thousands of lives. She waited. The enemy fleet passed the moon. They began to slow, preparing to enter orbit around Earth. Vorath was already composing the speech he would give when he accepted humanity's surrender. He never got the chance to give it. Now, Admiral Morrison said quietly. She pressed the button, and the darkness of space erupted into fire. The first warning Fleet Commander Vorath received was when 50 of his ships simply stopped existing. One moment they were there, moving in formation toward Earth. The next moment they were expanding clouds of debris, torn apart by weapons that had struck without any warning at all. What is happening? Vorath screamed, gripping the railing of his command platform as the crushing tide shuddered from a near miss. Where is that fire coming from? Subcommander Thelis was frantically working at his station, his clawed fingers moving across displays that were filling with error messages and damage reports. Commander, I do not understand. The attack came from the asteroid belt. There are thousands of projectiles incoming. Railgun rounds, missiles, energy weapons. They were hidden. All of it was hidden. Vorath stared at the tactical display in horror. Red warning indicators were appearing across his fleet as ship after ship took damage or was destroyed outright. The neat formation that had entered the Sol system was already beginning to scatter as captains broke ranks trying to evade the seemingly endless barrage. Raise shields, he ordered. All ships, raise shields and return fire. But the shields took precious seconds to activate, and those seconds cost the hegemony dearly. Electromagnetic pulse warheads detonated throughout the fleet, carefully timed to hit during the shield activation sequence. The pulses overloaded power systems and fried unprotected electronics. 130 more ships went dark, their crews suddenly trapped aboard vessels with no power, no weapons, and no hope. On the hidden command station in the asteroid belt, Commander Sarah Blake allowed herself a grim smile. First wave complete. 218 enemy ships destroyed or disabled. Preparing second wave. The second wave was even more devastating. Railgun platforms concealed on the moons of Jupiter and Saturn opened fire, their magnetically accelerated rounds crossing the vast distances of space in minutes. Each projectile was a simple piece of tungsten, no larger than a human fist, but traveling at nearly 3% of the speed of light. When they struck hegemony vessels, they did not explode. They simply punched through, the kinetic energy alone enough to tear ships apart from the inside. Captain Kevin Rhodes watched from the bridge of the Defiance as the enemy fleet dissolved into chaos. Ships that had been advancing confidently toward Earth were now spinning wildly, trying to identify threats that seemed to come from everywhere at once. He felt something he had not expected to feel. Pity. All ships, he announced over the fleet channel. Advance and engage. Target their engines first. Do not let them run. The visible human fleet surged forward, but they were not alone. From behind the moon came more ships. From hidden hangars on Mars came more. From concealed positions throughout the solar system came vessel after vessel, emerging from the shadows like wolves descending on wounded prey. The 47 ships that the hegemony had dismissed as insignificant became 300, and they were angry. Lieutenant Commander Beth Collins led a squadron of fast attack ships, straight into the heart of the hegemony formation. Her ship, the Viper, was less than 1/10 the size of the crushing tide, but it was fast and maneuverable in ways that the larger hegemony vessels could not match. All ships. Target the carriers first. Stop them from launching fighters. The hegemony carriers were massive vessels designed to deploy hundreds of smaller attack craft. They were the backbone of the Empire's offensive capability. Beth watched as her squadron tore through their ranks. Precision strikes, disabling launch bays, and destroying fuel reserves. One carrier exploded as her missiles found its reactor core, the blast taking out 2 nearby cruisers as well. On the crushing tide, Fleet Commander Vorath was experiencing something he had never felt before in his long military career. Defeat. Complete, utter, overwhelming defeat. "Commander, we have lost 400 ships," Thelis reported, his voice hollow with shock. "The remaining vessels are scattered and taking heavy damage. Our formations have completely broken down. We cannot coordinate a counterattack." Vorath watched as another wave of missiles streaked toward his fleet. The humans were not just defeating them. They were dismantling them with surgical precision, targeting command ships and communication relays first, then picking off the remaining vessels at leisure. "How is this possible?" he whispered. "They were supposed to be primitive. They were supposed to be weak." A nearby cruiser exploded, the shockwave rocking the crushing tide. Warning alarms blared throughout the bridge as damage reports flooded in. The flagship's shields were failing. Its engines were damaged, it was dying, and there was nothing Vorath could do to stop it. Captain Kevin Rhodes guided the Defiance through the debris field that had once been the greatest armada in hegemony history. Around him, other human ships were doing the same, hunting down survivors and offering them a choice: surrender or die. Most chose to surrender. Admiral Linda Morrison watched the battle unfold from her command center beneath the Rocky Mountains. The tactical display showed the systematic destruction of the hegemony fleet. Red dots winked out one by one as ships were destroyed or captured. In less than 4 hours, what had been 800 vessels was reduced to fewer than 60. "Admiral," Captain Daniel Perry said quietly, "the enemy flagship is still operational, but barely. Its shields are down, and its weapons are offline. Should we destroy it?" "Okay," Linda considered for a moment. "No. Leave it alive. Leave enough of them alive to tell the story." She looked at the display with eyes that held no joy, only a terrible resolve. "The galaxy needs to know what happened here. They need to understand what it means to threaten Earth." On the crushing tide, Fleet Commander Vorath sat in his command chair surrounded by the wreckage of his bridge. Fires burned in several sections. Bodies of his crew lay where they had fallen. The proud warship that had carried him to countless victories was now a crippled hulk drifting through space. He had come to Earth expecting easy victory. He had come believing humans were weak and primitive. He had been wrong. So terribly, catastrophically wrong. A communication request appeared on what remained of his display. He accepted it with shaking hands, already knowing who it would be. Admiral Linda Morrison looked at him through the screen. Her face was calm, almost serene. Behind her, he could see the controlled activity of a command center that had just orchestrated the complete destruction of his fleet. "Commander Vorath," she said simply, "I believe we need to talk." The battle for Earth was over. The hegemony had lost. Fleet Commander Vorath stood in what remained of his bridge, surrounded by the broken bodies of his officers and the shattered remnants of his command systems. Smoke hung in the air, mixing with the acrid smell of burned circuitry and spilled coolant. Emergency lights cast everything in a dim red glow that felt appropriate for the disaster that had unfolded. He had commanded 800 ships, the largest armada assembled in over a century. They had come to Earth expecting to crush a primitive species and absorb their world into the hegemony. Instead, they had been utterly destroyed. The communication screen flickered to life, and the face of Admiral Linda Morrison appeared before him. She looked tired, but calm, her gray eyes studying him with something that might have been curiosity or might have been pity. Vorath could not tell. "Commander," she said, I think you understand now why we asked you to leave. Vorath wanted to rage at her. He wanted to threaten her with the full might of the hegemony, to promise that this defeat would be avenged 1,000 times over. But he was too exhausted for anger, too broken by what he had witnessed. How? He asked instead. How did you do this? Our intelligence reported you had 50 ships. Basic technology. Limited military capability. Everything we knew about your species indicated you were decades away from being a serious threat. Linda Morrison allowed herself a small smile. That was exactly what we wanted you to believe, Commander. For 30 years, we have been preparing for this day. We knew it would come eventually. Sooner or later, someone would decide that humanity needed to be conquered. So we built our visible fleet, small and weak. We let your spies see exactly what we wanted them to see. And behind that mask, we built something else entirely. You deceived us. We defended ourselves. There is a difference. She leaned forward slightly. Commander, did you truly believe we would allow ourselves to be conquered? Did you think we would watch your ships enter our solar system and simply surrender? Humanity has survived ice ages, plagues, asteroid impacts, and 2 world wars. We have come back from the brink of extinction more times than I can count. Do you know what that teaches a species? Vorath said nothing. It teaches us to be ready. Linda continued. Always ready. For anything. Your hegemony has conquered dozens of species. But they all had something in common. They believed that when a superior force came, they had no choice but to submit. Humans do not think that way. When we see a threat, we do not submit. We prepare. We adapt. We find a way to win. She gestured to someone off screen. And the image changed to show the wreckage of the hegemony fleet. Debris fields stretched across thousands of kilometers. Crippled ships drifted without power. Escape pods dotted the void like seeds scattered by a dying flower. It was the graveyard of an empire's ambitions. 57 of your ships remain functional, Linda said, as the image returned to her face. We will allow them to leave. You will take your survivors and return to your hegemony council. You will tell them exactly what happened here. They will send more ships. Vorath said, though his voice carried no conviction. They will not accept this defeat. I am counting on that. Linda's expression grew harder. Commander, let me be very clear about what I am telling you. Humanity does not want war. We never wanted war. We wanted to explore the stars, meet new species, learn new things. We extended friendship to your hegemony, and you responded with threats. We asked for nothing but to be left in peace. And you sent 800 ships to conquer our home. She paused, letting her words sink in. We will not start wars. But we will finish them. Today was not our full strength, Commander. Today was simply what we were willing to reveal. Tell your council that the next fleet they send will face worse, and the one after that will face worse still. We have been preparing for war for 3 decades. We have weapons your scientists cannot imagine. We have strategies your tacticians have never considered. We have the will to do whatever is necessary to protect our people. Vorath felt something cold settle in his stomach. He had spent 2 centuries believing the hegemony was invincible. Today, that belief had been shattered along with his fleet. What do you want? He asked finally. We want to be left alone, Linda replied. We want to explore and trade and live our lives without the threat of conquest hanging over us. We want the same thing every free species wants, the right to choose our own future. Her voice softened slightly. But we are not naive, Commander. We know that message alone will not be enough. So, we offer something else as well. Well, too. I'm not naive, what? Hope. Linda smiled, and there was genuine warmth in it. The hegemony rules through fear. You convince species that resistance is impossible, so they never try. But today, every species in the galaxy will learn that the hegemony can be defeated. They will learn that a young species with primitive technology stood against your greatest armada and won. That knowledge will spread. It will grow. And one day, Commander, it will bring your empire down. She straightened in her chair. Go home. Tell your council what happened. Tell them that Earth is not a planet to be conquered. It is a warning. Any species that threatens peaceful worlds, any empire that rules through fear and violence, will eventually face what you face today. Humanity will be watching, and if necessary, humanity will act. The transmission ended. Vorath stood alone on his ruined bridge, staring at the empty screen. Around him, the surviving ships of his fleet were beginning to power up their damaged engines, preparing for the long journey home. They would limp back to hegemony space, carrying the story of their defeat. A story that would spread across the galaxy like wildfire. 3 weeks later, Vorath stood before the Hegemony High Council. The chamber was silent as he delivered his report. He told them about the hidden weapons, the ambush, the complete destruction of his fleet. He told them about Admiral Linda Morrison and her final message. When he finished, the council sat in stunned silence. High Counselor Merrick was the first to speak. What do you recommend, Commander? Vorath thought about the human admiral and the terrible certainty in her eyes. He thought about the species that had built a weapon system capable of destroying an empire while pretending to be weak. He thought about what it meant that such a species had chosen mercy when they could have chosen extermination. I recommend, he said slowly, that we leave them alone. The stars had watched humanity's victory. The stars had recorded the moment when a young species stood against impossible odds and won. And in the years that followed, the stars would watch as other species learned from humanity's example. Earth had sent a message that day, not just to the hegemony, but to the entire galaxy. Humanity was ready, and humanity was not afraid.